Welcome back to KMI Community Connect. We are going to be talking about where we left last time. This is part 13 of Metabolism Made Easy. So last time we have brought in the concept of osmolality, which is the concentration in the blood, and I have given a small demo of adding sugar and salt and giving you kind of an idea about how the blood looks or how our body state looks when we make something more concentrated and make something more dilute. So for that, one of the most important things is sodium we talked about. So today I'm going to be discussing a little bit more in detail about how to link in or how to bring in together these concepts of the concentration, because if you remember last time I was also talking to you about why it is not just important about the amount of salt, it is more about the concentration. So the old paradigm of how it was taught to a lot of us, including in our medical education as well as for you, is that if you have high blood pressure, to cut in the amount of salt. And we talked a little bit about it's not the amount, it is the concentration of salt. It's not rather just the amount sometimes, or it is not about the amount, it is about the concentration. And we have given a small demo about giving a salty soup and also a soup which is salty but it's diluted. So when you give a salty soup, you increase the blood sodium in the blood acutely, transiently, and then the blood pressure goes up and comes down. And if you give water and make that concentrated soup dilute, you don't raise the sodium in the blood, and in the process you make it very dilute and you don't cause an increased blood pressure response. So with that being said, we have established one important thing here, that is, if I say high blood pressure and I'm going to pressure and I'm going to put it as a short form here as HTN, which means hypertension. We can cause very high blood pressure, and we already have talked just now as well as in the last demo that it is with sodium that can cause a major influence in the blood, increasing the blood pressure. So I'm going to put this here as Na in the chemical form, which is sodium. So one of the important factors that determines the osmolality that we talked about, which is the concentration that increases the blood pressure, is sodium. What is the other one that is going to increase the blood pressure? What is the other factor or other chemical in the blood which is going to increase the blood pressure? That I'm going to put a different picture, that way you can differentiate better, and that is uric acid. Now if you see, one is the osmolality, the other one, osmolality with the sodium, the other one is uric acid. If you see the name uric acid, and if you see here blood urea nitrogen, urea, uric acid, nitrogen, they all categorically we can say belong to the same thing, urea, nitrogen. That is one of the other determinants that increases the blood pressure. So here we are now going to bring in some practical concepts to make sure that you understand how this is all linked. So now we are going to link the sugar and salt, and most of you know that sodium is salt. And there are many salts, but sodium is one of the main salts, like magnesium is a salt, and there are many salts in the body, but sodium is one of the important salts that we talk about, that is connected to blood pressure. And uric acid is connected to many talks that we did in the past, is sugar. Now this is the sugar, the table sugar, or whatever we call the various kinds of sugars, but when I say sugar, it is purely the fructose. So I'm going to talk about that, how that happens. So this sugar, so basically we are trying to link salt and sugar causing high blood pressure. Most of the people only think that it's the sodium, which is the salt, but now I'm trying to link either way, the salt and the sugar, which can cause high blood pressure. So what is this sugar? I keep saying so many times in the past, I talked about what is called as the sugar is actually nothing but two molecules, which is glucose and fructose. Now for all practical purposes, for you, remember that if you eat rice or if you eat a potato, that's just glucose. That's starch, but it's glucose molecules building up to form starch. That's an example that I'm giving you. But fructose is the fruit sugar. So your sugar molecule is again made up of glucose and fructose. Now I have also said in the past, and I'm going to repeat it one more time, when we eat glucose, only thing that is in excess in the glucose will convert to fat, and only 20% whatever is in excess will become fat, which is storing excess energy. Whereas in fructose, everything becomes fat. That means it's 100% fat production. Now this is important for you to understand. I'll come back to this later. So we have salt and we have sugar, and sodium, salt leading to high blood pressure, and uric acid also causing high blood pressure through another pathway, which is the sugar becoming glucose and fructose. Now how does that happen? If you recall, in the few episodes in the past, I have talked about something called fructose becoming uric acid. So the fructose becomes uric acid, whereas glucose does not become uric acid. So the fructose here becomes uric acid, which drives high blood pressure and which also drives making fat. So these are the two things that happen when you are actually activating or eating fructose, which is your table sugar or all kinds of sugars that you eat, because it has it changes into uric acid, and that uric acid is going to run high blood pressure and also make fat. So uric acid is closely related to high blood pressure, to make it simpler for you, and sodium drives high blood pressure, uric acid drives high blood pressure, and fructose makes uric acid, again to make it simple for you, and drives high blood pressure, and fructose makes fat. So let us try to make this more simpler instead of just making it very complex. We know today that salt and sugar are connected, and they drive both high blood pressure and making more fat. For your better understanding, now I want to talk about two important mechanisms. Now I'm going to bring back the concept of concentration in the blood. How is it related to the body? There are two essential driving forces that determine the signals in the body about concentration. What is the first signal? Is dehydration. Dehydration So imagine when somebody is dehydrated, that means there is less water. Water is gone out of our body and then the blood becomes concentrated. So whenever there is a dehydration signal in the body, when you are vomiting, when you have diarrhea, when you don't drink enough water, it triggers a survival signal. So dehydration is a very big survival signal. This is important. It's a survival signal. This is the first one. The second survival signal is starvation. So when you don't have access to food, these are very powerful survival signals. So what happens when you get this survival signal? Remember, I did a demo where when your body loses water, your blood becomes more concentrated. So whenever there is a dehydration signal, which is a survival signal, then your blood sodium goes up. See, the blood sodium goes up. And when your blood sodium goes up, your body, the blood pressure goes up. So what happens when you are dehydrated? As a consequence, the mechanism is, because your blood pressure goes down, your sodium concentration goes down, the body tries to make up by increasing the blood pressure. So it's a compensatory auto-regulatory mechanism. It works through the brain. So what does the body do? This is in a normal person when the brains, the kidney and all organs are working well. The body tries to send a signal to the brain, and the brain produces a chemical which is called vasopressin. Now you don't have to remember this name, but if you dissect this name, vaso is vessel, which is a blood vessel. If this is the blood vessel, vasopressin, pressin, so increasing the pressure. How does it happen? The brain tries to retain water from the kidneys. It retains water from the kidneys. And it holds on to water by making this hormone. So when that happens, the body is trying to come back to the normal pressure because and try to decrease the concentration. So when you retain water, the sodium is trying to come back to balance by retaining water. So this is a normal autoregulatory compensatory mechanism. But on the other side, whenever there is a dehydration signal, since it's a survival signal, one more thing happens, because we talked about osmolality with the sodium dehydration. The same signal, it is not just related to the blood pressure, increasing the blood pressure, it is also related to making more fat. How does that happen? Because that is how it is related to when. So if you have anything that increases sodium in the body, when you are dehydrated, the body converts glucose to fructose. So when you are dehydrated, the body tries to convert glucose to fructose because it's a survival mechanism. Why? Because when you make fructose, you are trying to store energy because you are in a survival mode. So the glucose that you have in the body will get converted to fructose. Very important. This is not the glucose what you are eating from outside. This is the glucose that you have within the body. So the glucose that is within the body is being converted to fructose with the dehydration signal or when you eat high sodium foods. So whenever sodium goes up in the body, either by eating something from outside, high salty foods, or when you lose body water and your sodium goes up because of high concentration, both things can trigger a survival mechanism, and that pathway will lead your own glucose that you have in the body to convert to fructose, which makes 100% fat because it's a survival mechanism to preserve energy and store fat. And in the process, this is the fructose that is made within the body, not what you eat. And that fructose again in turn goes through uric acid pathway to either increase the blood pressure and also to make more fat. So today I'm going to bring in this concept again next time to explain to you, but I want to explain this concept of why salt and sugar are the same causing high blood pressure, high fat. This is more important for people who understand that they may be eating right, but if they are dehydrated and if they send a signal of eating salt, especially for people who count calories, salt has no calories and they eat the same food. So if their state of the body is dehydrated, or if they add salt to something, even though they don't have calories there, this is where the calorie theory fails. The glucose that you have in the body gets converted to fructose and you make more fat even though you eat right. And that is the point that I am trying to make today, to make sure that salt is also going to make fat in the improper, if the body state is not well hydrated or if it is in a starvation mode. That's where this osmolality and concentration of the blood comes. So today I have some of the normal things that we do when we say counting calories, food and all. Here I have starchy material, mostly dense foods. This is French fries. This is made out of potato. And this is pretzels. This is made up of flour. And then this is potato, again chips. These are some of the foods which are salty that we eat. And most of these foods are just glucose. But when you add salt to it, because our cravings are mostly for salt to make it tasty, you would not eat these foods without salt. So if you just count calories or something, what happens is when you add salt to these foods, the salt converts this glucose to fructose, plus also it makes you dehydrated. You get the third signal, and everything will trigger the fructose pathway and make more uric acid, increase the blood pressure, increase the fat. So people get deceived a lot of times about counting calories, and it's about what happens and what are the pathways that are getting triggered, how the survival pathway is unnecessarily triggered, where salt will make more uric acid from fructose by converting your own glucose and causing these high blood pressure and weight changes. So this is very important concept for you to understand. I'll go one more time in detail next time to explain this for all those who are not generally in the medical field, but these are some of the things that we want to be careful. We generally don't advise what to do with food, but I wanted to give the mechanism. But should there be any question for you, like what should I do if I have to eat these kind of foods outside in a party or in social situations? It is always good to remember the concept of diluting the salt so that you don't trigger this pathway. So drinking more water before you eat these kind of foods, if you have to eat, will cause less damage of producing high blood pressure as well as making less fat. I will come back and talk to you more in detail next time. I hope we have been able to connect this salt and sugar and the other pathways of making fat and high blood pressure elaborately today. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.